Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Meta Club. This week's Race C is a relatively new combination that I don't think we've exactly had before, but it is fairly similar to ones we've had in the past. With that said, I do have a completely new anti-meta car. Let's get into it. The anti-meta car of the week is the Audi TT. Long before the Mazda 3 dominance, the front-wheel drive class in pretty much all of Group 4 was dominated by the Audi TT. Those days are long gone, and now instead it provides some really good anti-meta power for the Group 4 class. I managed to get a 114.8, making me the second fastest front-wheel drive car on the leaderboard and the fastest TT Cup. The NSX seems like the main meta car, but the 4C and the Citroen are also very good. While pretty much anything works in the slipstream, these cars can handle the race on their own without having to rely on the slipstream. As we approach turn 1, I'm going to try to remember that these are probably in feet and not meters, so right after the 200 footboard, that's when you're going to hit the brakes. Brake in a straight line down to third gear, and once your entire car passes the 100 footboard, then you can start turning in and trail braking to the apex. Avoid steering too much and avoid jamming on the throttle too heavily because you will induce understeer with any front-wheel drive car like this. With that said, you do need to get on it early and heavily and make sure you use all of the track, including the edge of the curb and these curbs right here. It seems like the sweet spot to shift into 5th gear is 119 miles per hour, which is approximately 191 kilometers per hour. Making sure you ride on the curb right here will ensure you're taking the shortest path possible. For this straight, even in slipstream, you do not need to shift up to 6th gear. The bus stop is super complex, so I'm going to try to break down each little step. Your braking point is right after the 300 footboard, and it's also when you're going to immediately start turning in. Get down to 4th gear and continue turning in and past the curb until you go over the bump. By the time your front tires hit the pavement between the two corners, I want you to neutralize your steering wheel, add a small amount of brakes, and then trail brake in so you can just barely clear this white line right here. Once clear of the curb, you need to add a little bit more steering before then fully getting on the throttle. Be careful because too much of either of those will induce understeer. Staying on the throttle over the 3rd curb, right before you get to the 4th, you need to switch directions, and that is effectively going to change the weight distribution of the car. Look at the red dot above the tachometer to see how little steering input I'm adding. All I need to do is shift the weight to the left side of the car so it'll rotate over this curb and set me up for the next corner. Squeeze full throttle over the curb until you're just past this little access road and then start lifting gently. Notice that I'm gently adding more and more steering as I come more and more off the throttle. When the car stops moving in towards the inside of the corner, you can add a tiny amount of brake, and then right after this little exit road, you can then add throttle. You may notice that I'm adding and subtracting throttle. I'm also playing with the steering. I'm trying to make sure that I have grip. It can be very difficult to figure out exactly when you have grip versus when you don't, but going this fast, the front downforce should take care of it for you as long as you don't go past the slip angle of the front tires too much. Once again, as long as you don't go all the way over the curb, then you should be totally fine, and you do want to get on that throttle as early as you possibly can. As you approach the next corner, it's important to note that you will be turning in and braking at the same time. Right before the 200 footboard, I want you to add about 50% brake pressure, turn in a little bit, and then start trail braking all the way to this apex. It's easy to scrub off too much speed here, so I want you to come off the brakes as early as you can, add steering, and then very gently get on the throttle until you're absolutely sure that you won't go all the way past this curb. As long as you stay on the left side of the curb with your left tires, you should be totally fine. Quickly move to the left side of the track so you can straighten out before you get to this change in the barrier right here, and right when your nose gets past it, you're going to do the exact same as the last corner. You're going to brake gently, turn in immediately, staying in 4th gear, add steering as you get off the brakes, and then add throttle as soon as you hit that apex. If you steer too much, or if you're too heavy on the throttle, it will induce understeer, and you can very easily go in that wall, which of course you do not want. From here, it's a straight shot, and even though it's a short lap, it can be even more tough because you have less opportunities to make up time. I've heard a lot of misconceptions about front-wheel drive cars in the time that I've been sim racing and interested in motorsports in general. And the one thing that I think is really important to note is that front-wheel drive cars put such a heavy emphasis on the front wheels or the front tires that you can very easily overload them, overheat them, and essentially make them not want to do anything. Something that helped me a really long time ago is imagining that there's a string attached to your steering wheel and it's also attached to your foot. When you're adding the brakes with a straight steering wheel, then you're not going to be breaking the string. The string's going to be as taut as it can be on the verge of breaking. So in order to turn that steering wheel without breaking that string, you've got to release the brake pressure. Tires have a very finite amount of grip, and if you go beyond that level of grip, then you start to slide. So it's important that you don't try to do too many things. Braking uses a percentage of that grip, turning uses another percent of that grip. So if you try to do too much of both, you're just going to go beyond it and you're going to cause understeer. And since everything's so heavily focused on the front tires, it becomes a disaster when you start to understeer, slide, and overheat your tires. So you've got to be very careful about your inputs and try to imagine that string idea. With that said, the grippy tires and the extra downforce because it's a race car do help a lot, but you still have to follow the basic principles. When it comes to the strategy for the race, the only requirement that you actually have is going into the pits. That does not mean that you have to take tires, and in fact, most cars can do this race without needing tires whatsoever. While it might only cost a couple of seconds to take tires, this is a slipstream race, which means people are going to be very close throughout the entire thing. And the 2 or 3 seconds that it takes to take tires could mean the difference between winning a race and getting maybe even 6th or 7th place. Despite the fact that this is a front-wheel drive car and logic would suggest that the front tires would get shredded, the front-wheel drive cars seem to actually have pretty good tire wear. When looking at the tire wear compared between all the different cars in the field, the front-engine rear-wheel drive cars actually had the worst front tire wear, much worse than this car. I'm saying all this because I want to reinforce the fact that you absolutely do not need to take tires, so that means the only strategic difference that you can make is when to pit. If you're starting anywhere near the back, general logic would suggest that you should pit really early, have completely free space and open air, and then you should be able to just drive your own race. However, this is a slipstream race. With the amount of straights on this track, if you're not utilizing slipstream, then you're most definitely going to be at a disadvantage. I have heard that there are people, usually in lower lobbies, that don't actually understand the idea of bump drafting, so if you run into the wrong person, they might think you're actually trying to push them off the track, and they might not respond correctly. Hopefully most people that play this game by now realize that if they're getting a bump on the straight, then that means the person is trying to work with them. Of course, it's important not to bump people too close to a braking zone, but that is definitely part of learning how to do this. If you know someone that you trust, you can most definitely try to work with them, and I definitely suggest actually contacting them before the race if possible, and if not, just make it really obvious that you're trying to work with people. Let's say you can do a 16 flat in this race. If you know 2 people who can go 16.5 at their best, but they're bump drafting with each other, they could end up going faster than you could by yourself. Taking a moment, I do not understand this guy's behavior. He was repeatedly bumping me, and he tried to squeeze me here despite the fact that he was behind me and not going for an overtake, which caused me to then almost crash, and then he tried to take advantage and pass. Watching the replay, every single time he was next to someone, he repeatedly ran into them. I have no clue why someone would do something like this. It is not impossible nor even difficult to just line your car up next to someone regardless of what you're using. If you're on a controller, if you're on motion control, if you're on a wheel, there's absolutely no reason to initiate contact so much. And I think people just really need to pay attention to their mirrors and their radar. I was very much next to that person who also just turned directly into me. I do not understand why people do this kind of stuff. It's not helping anyone. At best, you're just gonna annoy the person you're racing with. But I digress. Since this is, like I said, a slipstream race, I decided not to pit on the first lap and instead try to use the slipstream of whoever I could get behind and try to go and pass them, or pass as many of them as I possibly could, leading into the many braking zones after a long straight. With all the different things that were happening and all the positions that I took just in the first couple of laps, and as you can see there's even another person up ahead serving a big penalty, it seemed like it was probably the best for me to actually stay on track, not go to the pits yet, and just try to work with one of the people who qualified in the front. Unfortunately, even at its peak in the middle of the day in this region, people who do the top split races are not necessarily all of the same pace. The people who actually qualify towards the front are almost never going to be the same pace as the people towards the back, and that's just because there are not a lot of people playing online right now, at least not a lot of people in the upper echelons in our region. EMEA, the European and Middle East and African region, that is much more populated, many more fast people, but yeah. Because of this, I'm not sure how it is in other splits. I don't know if the lower splits are any more balanced, but because of all this, if I were to pit right now, since I'm close to the front, there's a high chance that I'd actually run into a slower driver who had not even pit yet. If you find yourself in a lobby full of people who actually are really close in pace, one thing you can try to do is just follow someone that you think you can trust into the pits and then start bump drafting them and essentially letting them know that you're willing to work with them. One of the very best ways to do this is push someone on the straights, and when you approach a braking zone, lift off early, giving them space to know that you're not trying to attack into the next corner. The slipstream is strong enough that you should be able to easily catch up with them and provide another bump. If not, you can at the very least use the slipstream just to stay with them in their pace. On the other side of this, if you find yourself being pushed by someone going into the straights and they're trying not to attack in the corners, then you know they're trying to work with you, so do your best to work with them. But don't think that they're suddenly your best friend and they're just going to give you that position. The entire point of working with someone is so you can both get closer to the front initially and then battle it out at the end. As you can see, Helios gave me a bump rather than try to attack into turn 1, and that doesn't necessarily mean he's not going to attack anymore. It's just smart not to attack people into turn 1. If you do pass someone in turn 1, they're going to have slipstream from being behind you for the entirety of this straight up this hill, and they're going to have a huge advantage over you. Now, if you know that you're not quite as fast as the person who is in front of you, you can just continue to bump draft them, which will make them go faster, which will then make you go faster. And if you don't think you can pull off a pass, then of course you can just take the positions that you get by working with someone. With all that said, our friend Flash gave me the idea to use this, Flash Dagger, who I'm going to try to remember to link in the video itself. He gave the idea to use this car and said that he got a 14.7 in the race, which is a fantastic time, obviously. With the slipstream, I would manage to get a 15 flat without the slipstream and a couple more 15 flats with the slipstream. So obviously this car is very capable with and without the slipstream. Most people I see are not doing 15 flats, so the fact that this thing can do a 15 flat by itself means that this car is definitely something special. The car behind and the car ahead are both the meta cars, and I want you to see exactly how powerful this car is in the slipstream. As we cross the start-finish line, I'm a second ahead, Helio behind, and I'm about a little bit under 6/10 behind Exterminador up ahead. It looks like we both got a similar exit coming out of T1, but I want you to see exactly how powerful the slipstream is as we go up the hill. I actually believe this car is faster than the NSX in a straight line by itself, so when you add the slipstream of the NSX, when the NSX also has the fantastic cornering abilities, then you get this massive effect. I'm now only 2/10 behind him going into this next braking zone, actually less than that. I also feel that the TT can brake better, more efficiently and later than the NSX, but the NSX overall goes a lot faster through there, and for this final corner, actually it's not the final corner, this super long right-hander, I don't know why I call it the final corner, I think the NSX is better than this car. Going into the last two corners, it is definitely going to be the same. The NSX is going to go a lot faster, but of course there are the two straights, including the very long one up that hill, and that is where I'm going to have the advantage. You only need to be about a second, sometimes even a little bit more than a second, you can still get the slipstream. So as long as you stay approximately within a second of the person ahead, you should be able to get that slipstream effect, and as you can see, it's going to be very, very useful. As you can see, I'm approaching him very quickly. I'm going to come off the throttle just a little bit, which will allow me to brake at the same time as him, or approximately the same time, with less brake pressure, and that should allow me to corner pretty much the same way that he is, or even get a better exit like I did. Now, if he covers the inside, like many people are going to, you don't have to worry because this thing definitely has enough power to get all the way next to him going into these next set of corners, and you should be able to get all the way in front of any NSX as long as you were as close as I was. And going into the corner, like I said, this thing does brake heavier and deeper, so you shouldn't have any problem getting and staying ahead of the meta car going into the bus stop. Now, I'm not one to try to give away a spoiler, but the rest of this race was actually pretty much nothing. I did end up winning it, and I'm going to jump to the end so you can see by exactly how much, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that and then show some more footage of exactly what this car can do against the meta car driven by a very fast driver. Looking at second place, I believe our friend Hellsfire probably pit really early, hoping that he could just have completely clean air, and I'm guessing that he drove entirely by himself. Because I was able to use slipstream from multiple people and pass really cleanly because of how powerful this car is, I was able to finish 4.5 seconds in front of anyone else. As much as I like discussing the strategy and of course showing off a win, I want to show you what this car can do head-to-head against someone who's really capable in the meta car. In this race, I was going against Drum Tank and Velasa, and spoiler alert, I actually did not win this one, but that's not the only reason I'm not showing you. There were also some incidents towards the beginning, and I'd rather not show a lot of the ugliness. I do want to talk about what this car can do, though. The Supra does not have a lot of top speed, but I do trust Velasa, and I did think that he was going to be faster than Drum Tank, so I bet on him, tried to push him, and we both were able to get all the way in front. I was able to brake super late, and as you can see, it was a little too much for Velasa, unfortunately. I did manage to get past both of them, but just at the expense of Velasa going off. I passed Drum Tank, however, really cleanly without him going off, and that is going to set a pattern of exactly what I was able to do defending against the NSX. I actually realized that I probably shouldn't have spoiled this race because you can go back and watch it on my Twitch VOD if you do want to, but I should have known from what I did right here that I should have taken this line. You'll know what I'm talking about if you watch it. The fact that I took the outside line kind of equalized our handling capabilities. The fact that my car doesn't handle quite as well as the NSX, but I went on the outside, giving myself a bit more room and allowing me to carry more speed, meant that I was able to stay in front of him and then just defend like normal going into the corner after that. Going into turn 1, I lucked out very temporarily by the fact that Drum Tank and Velosa were battling going to that corner, so they both slowed down just a little bit, leading to this really long straight, and that gave me just enough breathing room that I didn't have to worry too much about exactly what they're going to do, even if they decide to work together at this moment leading into the next braking zone. The NSX doesn't have the power and the acceleration that this car does, and the Supra definitely doesn't have quite enough to push him, so when it came to the braking zone, I was still side by side, and like I mentioned before, I can brake insanely deeply in this car. Part of that is because of the stability of the front-wheel drive, but part of it is just because this is just a fantastic machine. This time going around, for absolutely no reason, I decided to defend on the inside, but luckily I was able to brake super deep, maintain my line, and he wasn't able to pull off any kind of switcheroo because I did maintain enough speed. Staying in the middle of the track made it so he didn't have a lot of options. He just kind of followed me through, and then once again I was able to use the really good acceleration of this car and pull away. This time leading into the bus stop chicane, I wasn't nearly as lucky when it came to the pace of the cars. He was actually all the way in front of me, but I still braked as late as I could, and I was able to get all the way in front of him before the second apex. We all kept it clean, and he unfortunately lost his space to Velosa, which also meant the end of my race as well. I wasn't actually going to show this race, but I felt disingenuous by not showing my loss, so I'm just going to show you. You know, I already spoiled the race. I decided to defend on the inside, and the thing about these two cars is this car is powerful and doesn't handle really well. The Supra is not powerful, handles extremely well, so he was able to maintain a lot more pace through that corner, and there's absolutely nothing I can do right here. Despite the fact that I definitely think this car is much superior to the Supra, and I don't think the Supra is a good option at all. Velosa drove incredibly well, and he made a much better decision by trying to attack on the outside. I have no clue why I decided to defend on the inside, but either way, it was a fantastic race. Velosa did really well, Drum Tank did really well, and I had a great time racing these guys today. There's a really good chance that even if I defended on the outside, Velosa would still be able to pass me there, but I would have given myself a much better opportunity to take the win if I had defended on the outside there. That corner, you can carry a lot of speed, and this car does not take the short corner or the tight corners very well, so learn from my mistakes. Don't defend against a handling car on the inside of that corner. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, I'll be making another guide every single week. To finish off, I'm going to leave you with a look at my current members. I love every one of you. Thank you.